The MG S5 is the latest addition from Chinese MG. And yes, even though the logo is the same, they're not British anymore. In this video, I go through the car both inside and out. And as always, I take a closer look at the built-in software, because in my opinion, that's one of the most important components in a modern electric car. It's also something that can be hard to assess during a short test drive at the dealership. There will also be another video where I take the car out on both the highway and country roads and test another thing that can be hard to assess during a short test drive, namely the assistance systems, that is, how good it is at adjusting speed, identifying the lane, and helping to steer for you. And here, the MG S5 is quite surprising, but not necessarily in a good way. If good driving assistants are important to you, you definitely shouldn't miss that video, where I also give my overall conclusion. So remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. The MG S5 starts at 230,000 Danish kroner for the standard range model. It has a 170 horsepower motor and a WLTP range of 340 kilometers. But since it can only AC charge on a single phase, meaning at 3.6 kilowatts, it's actually pretty impractical because charging the relatively small 49 kilowatt-hour battery can take up to 14 hours. So the real choice is between the two long-range versions, Comfort and Luxury. Both of them have a 231 horsepower motor and a 64 kilowatt-hour battery and can charge at 11 kilowatts AC and 139 kilowatts DC. According to MG, this means they can charge from 10 to 80% in 28 minutes. The WLTP range is 480 kilometers for the Comfort and 465 kilometers for the Luxury because the latter comes with 18-inch alloy wheels instead of the 17-inch wheels found on the Comfort models. The Comfort model costs 250,000 Danish kroner, and the Luxury currently costs 20,000 more. Unfortunately, with the Comfort model, you miss out on both the heat pump, rain sensor, and battery preconditioning, which are only available in the Luxury version. In the Luxury version, you also get an electrically adjustable driver's seat with lumbar support, electric tailgate, electrically folding side mirrors, a 360-degree camera, wireless charging for your phone, a leather steering wheel, and seats with synthetic leather elements. But I think it's a shame that the heat pump and battery preconditioning are reserved for the most expensive model. Because that really should be standard, and 20,000 kroner extra is still quite a bit if you don't care about the other upgrades. In practice, this means that if you plan to go on long trips in the car, your only real choice is actually the Luxury model at 270,000, which is the one I have here. So let's take a closer look at it. I actually quite like the design of the front of the MG S5, but there's really not much more to talk about up here, because the car, yes, despite its size, it actually doesn't have a frunk. The MG S5 is a relatively large car, it's an SUV, but the black skirts at the bottom make it look a bit lower in height. If I stand next to it, you can see that it does have a certain height. The tailgate on this Luxury model is electric, and it also has a kick sensor, and it actually works whether I stick my foot under it or swing it a bit, so it works really, really well. There's 453 liters of luggage space like this, and a nice flat loading edge. And if I lift up this panel here, I have some extra storage underneath, and I also have two smaller storage compartments located here on each side, but unfortunately, there's no 12-volt outlet back here, so I can't put, for example, a cooler in the trunk if I'm going on a long trip. If I fold down the split rear seat, I can expand the storage area to a total of 1,441 liters of storage, and that's pretty much all there is to say about the luggage space in the MG S5. The charging port on the MG S5 is located back here on the driver's side, same placement as on a Tesla. That also means you can easily use Tesla's superchargers when you're driving the MG S5. Personally, I prefer when it's located on the passenger side's front fender, because then it's easy to pull up to a fast charger by the curb, and I can still use superchargers as well. But hey, that's just a detail. This placement is also really good. As you would expect in a car of this size, there's also decent space here in the back seat. Now I'm sitting behind myself, and even though I'm only 1.72 meters tall, there's still plenty of space. However, I don't think there's an insane amount of headroom, so if you're maybe 1.85 meters tall, you should probably try sitting here to see how it feels. I fit here just fine, but hey, there are others who are bigger than me. Down here in the front, I have a couple of air vents, and then I have a single USB-C outlet. So if you have two kids in the back, they'll just have to fight over it to see who can keep their device charged. They really could have just added an extra one, if you ask me. Up here in the front, I have these storage pockets, and then I have an armrest here in the middle with two cup holders in it. Just like in many of the other Chinese brands, the driver's area here feels quite luxurious. The materials are relatively nice, no hard plastics, and you actually feel pretty comfortable here. The seats are also comfortable to sit in. Up here in the front, I have physical controls for the climate system, like this rotary knob here that I can use to adjust the temperature, and then I can turn the fan up and down here. And over here I have the volume and a home button. Just like I have a home button on the screen, I actually also have a physical home button up here, and it's actually quite nice to have that. It's really nice and easy that you can just adjust the temperature by turning this knob up here. On the steering wheel I have physical buttons. I have two joysticks, one on each side, and on one side I use it to control my music, and on the other side I use it to control my assistant systems. You can see more about that in the next video. In front of me here I have a large 12.8-inch screen, which is my main interface for the software, and I'll take a look at that in just a moment. And in front of the driver's seat I also have a big screen. I think it's 10 inches, where I can see information about speed and assistance and so on. I have two cup holders up here, which are quite nice. And then I have my gear selector here, kind of Audi-like. Actually, it's really nice. A bit funny, I have a park button here. If I press down in the middle, I put the car in park. But I actually also have a park toggle back here. I'm not really sure why I need two, but this one works just fine. So why is that one there? I don't know. In this model, which is the luxury version, I also have inductive charging here, and I have a little holder up here in front where I can, for example, drop my phone in if I just want it to sit here without charging, and I actually really like that too. The car has both wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so sometimes you might just want to toss your phone down there and have it sitting without charging. Down here under the center console, well, I have plenty of storage space, but I don't have any outlets down here. They're here under the armrest because there's actually a large storage compartment down here, and there are two USB-C ports and a 12-volt socket. They're nicely out of the way, so I can either keep my devices down here or I can pull a cable out. There's a little spacer here so I can run a cable up through here if I want to do that. But I can't really keep things down here without having cables running around like this. Whether you think it's smart or not, I don't know, but at least they're out of the way when they're down there. And on the door, well, I just have controls for my 4 windows, and I can lock the windows so they can't be opened or closed in the back. And on the door here, I have my lock button to lock and unlock the car directly. So that works as it should too. In this luxury model, I have an electrically adjustable seat, which I can control with buttons down here on the side, and I also have both heated steering wheel and heated front seats, and I can control that from the touch screen here. Of course, we also need to take a look at the car's software, as I always do, because I think that's one of the most important elements in an electric car. Let's face it, most electric cars drive pretty well. In the MG, I have my large screen here in the center, which I use to interact with the car, and I have 2 main screens I can swipe between. Here, I have a few different elements. It looks like they're fixed, meaning I can't move them around, but honestly, they're actually pretty good ones to have here. I have direct access to my navigation, my music, the air conditioning, CarPlay or Android Auto, and I can see the current weather. And then I can just swipe to the side, and then I have some online services. It doesn't look like there's any app store in here, so these are online services that MG has included. There's Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Amazon Music. Great, if that's what you normally use. And while I think it's great that there's YouTube, I don't use Spotify or Amazon for my music, so that's pretty useless. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like you can install any apps yourself. This is also where you can see your battery. Of course, you can also see that on the display in front of the driver. And then you have a few other different pieces of information. You have a user manual, and you can contact SOS and MG, and you can connect to a phone. And over here, there's a button called Video. And that's if you have a USB drive with, for example, an MP4 or similar file. Then you can plug it in into the USB-C port down here, and then you can sit and watch videos that you have on a USB drive right here on the screen. So that's actually pretty cool that it's possible. But if we just go back here and go into settings, in here I have the main setup of the system. I can choose the brightness of the screen, and I can choose whether I want light mode or if I want to use dark mode. Right now I'm using light mode here because then there's a bit better contrast so you can better see what's going on. I can choose the system language, I can choose whether the clock and date should be set automatically, what measurement units to use, all those kinds of standard settings. This is also where I can adjust the Bluetooth settings. I can turn on the car's wireless network. I can control the car's hotspot, whether it's active and what frequency it should run on. I can choose the voice assistance language, and I actually have the option to select Danish. There are a whole lot of languages I can choose from in here, so I'm a bit curious to see how that works. I can also choose whether to enable this function called Hello MG. Now it might pop up, maybe. Yeah, so that's so I can interact with the voice assistant without having to press a button. It's popped up a couple of times, so I think I'll just turn it off so we don't accidentally trigger it. I can also trigger it here from the steering wheel. I have the option to adjust my various volume levels in here, both for multimedia, voice, phone, vehicle, alarms, system sounds, keyboard sounds, ringtone, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, I can't adjust the volume of the turn signal. I actually think it's pretty loud. It's quite an intense turn signal sound. You can definitely hear that it's there, but that's one I can't adjust. I can also set whether it should change the volume according to speed, like you know from various other systems. I have the option to go in and adjust the EQ. There are some presets I can choose between. Under System, well, I can see the system version number. You have it right here in case you try this car at a later time. And it's also possible to go in and activate over-the-air updates, so the car can search for updates. I don't know how often they are released. I don't really have any experience with that, but at least the option should be there. I can also activate various things, and I have some privacy information related to the use of the iSmart system that the car has. So those are all the different settings. They are all placed in a menu here on the side, completely on their own, and they're not really something you use that often either. Down here at the bottom of the screen, I have the most important functions. I have my seat heating and my steering wheel heating here, so they are easy to control, and I have access to the other primary functions in the system. I'll come back to the navigation because we'll cover that at the end. But of course I have access to my music. I have USB music, which is if I plug in a USB stick. I also have Bluetooth music, of course, via a phone or something else. And then I have DAB, FM, and AM radio, all of which I can control from here. Under car settings, this is where I set all the settings for the car. I can choose my different driving modes. I can activate one pedal drive. The car has that feature as well. I can select an energy-saving mode. And for each of these, if I'm unsure what they do, I can just tap that little I, and then it pops up and tells me what the function does and how to use it. I can choose how much the car regenerates when I release the accelerator, and I can choose whether auto hold should be activated, and so on. A lot of different settings here for the car. Then I have comfort and convenience. Here, I can turn the airbag on and off, select follow me home light, and so on. I can choose when looking for the car if it should turn on the lights and honk, or just turn on the lights. I can activate auto high beam, choose whether I want to unlock all doors with the key or only the driver's side door. I can open the tailgate from in here. I also have a shortcut for that. I'll show you that in just a moment. And I can fold the mirrors in and out and so on. I can also define some user buttons. I have 2 user buttons, one on the left and one on the right side of the steering wheel. For each, I can choose between different settings, which I can quickly access by pressing a button. That's actually nice, since I can customize 2 steering wheel buttons myself and choose their functions. That is, from these 6 different options, for example. Under MG Pilot, this is where I set all the assistance systems. And here, I can easily choose what I want to have turned on and what should be turned off. And just like in all the other modern cars, all these speed alerts and driver monitoring and things like that are always enabled by default. But here they've actually made a really clever feature because I have the option to change everything in this menu. You can see there are quite a lot of different settings. I can choose whether I want alarms or not, how active the alarm should be, what monitoring system should be active, and so on. And once I've made exactly the settings I want, let's say I don't want that speed alarm enabled, and maybe I also don't want that monitoring of the driver enabled, then I just need to confirm that I don't want that. Then up here at the top, I can press this button, and if I just hold it down for a moment, it says that the settings are now saved. And that means that when I get into the car, I can recall these settings. And I can do that via a shortcut menu, which I can swipe down from the top of the screen. So it's right over here. Then I just press it, and then I confirm the settings when I get into the car. Super, super smart. And it's a great way to set up your own settings and quickly get them back again, so you don't have to go into submenus. Inside this shortcut menu, which I brought up by swiping down from the screen, I also have various other buttons. I can't customize them. What you see is what you get, as you can see here. But for example, I can also open the tailgate from here, turn off the car, enable hill assist, and so on. It actually works quite well, and I can just swipe it away again when I don't need it. Under Instrument Cluster, I can choose which things are displayed on the right side of the driver's display. I have a field on the right side of the driver's display, which can show these different things, and I switch between them by pressing a button like this on the steering wheel, which toggles through the active ones, and here I can choose which ones should be active. If I don't want to toggle through all 6, I can, for example, choose 4 of them that I think are important, as selected here. So that's actually quite nice as well that I have the option to customize it. Last but not least, under Status, I can see whether the car needs servicing. I can see the voltage of the 12-volt battery, and I can turn off the car. If we move on to the next item, it's the phone settings, and that's basically just if I've connected a phone via Bluetooth, so if I'm not using CarPlay or Android Auto, then I can control it from here inside the car. And the last item in this car is the 360-degree camera, because it's the luxury edition, and if I press it, the 360-degree camera will appear. And over here, I can choose which camera I want to display on the screen here on the right side. So those are all the functions I have in the car, but of course, we also need to look at navigation, because that's one of the important things in an electric car. Can it help me get to where I need to go? Or can it help me by telling me how much charge I'll have when I arrive, and maybe even find charging stations for me? Let's have a look. If I press down here, it will appear. Maybe you just need to hit it like this. Sometimes it's a bit sluggish. In general, I actually think the software here feels a bit off, and it kind of fades between things. It's not super fast. I've actually also experienced that when I started the navigation here. This morning when I was going in to test it, well, it just sat there and brought up a full loading screen, loading navigation, as if it had to load the entire program, and it took, well, 30 to 40 seconds or something like that. I don't know how often it does that, but it was pretty annoying when you were just about to head out on the road. But now it's loaded, and then it goes relatively quickly, but I still think the software feels a bit slow. But hey, that's just how it is. Let's take a look at the navigation. I usually start by searching for the Opera to see if it can find points of interest, so that's what I'm doing here as well. I'm just typing here, the Opera House, there we go. And then it pops up and says that actually right at the top here it found the Opera, and it also shows me with a small flag which country it's in, since apparently there's something in Sweden too. It's actually quite nice that it shows a little flag. That way you can quickly identify which country it has found this address in. And I want the Opera in Copenhagen, so that's in Denmark. And once that's selected, I just need to click. I can click here to get more information. For example, I get a phone number and see that it's the correct one. And then I can select this one and it will calculate a route for me. And it tells me that it's 35 kilometers and I'll arrive with 44% state of charge. So that's really, really great. If I don't do anything else, it will start the route, or I can press start down here myself and then the route will begin. And I can also see that it tells me up here in the corner all the time, well, you'll arrive with 44%. So it constantly shows my expected arrival state of charge while I'm driving. I really, really like that too, because it's nice to be able to keep track of it. And especially in the beginning, when you need to figure out if the car can actually calculate it correctly. So that's approved. It can both find points of interest, and it shows me my arrival state of charge, and it also shows it along the way. So let's try something a bit more advanced, namely a trip to Paris, because I'll probably need some charging stops for that. To end my route, I press the menu over here, then I can select delete route and then confirm, and then I'm out of it. So now I go here, up, and then I'll try searching for Paris. I've done it before, so I just tap there. And then I can say, well, that's where I want to go, and then it starts calculating the route. I actually really like that it has this progress bar, because then you can see how fast it's calculating and how far along it is. And I don't know, it takes a little time, but it actually feels relatively fast because I can see how far along it is. I'm then told that there's not enough power, but then I can just tap up here to add a charging stop. It doesn't do it automatically, but I can press the button, and then it searches for charging stations. And let's just see how long it really takes. Yeah, so that actually took a really long time because it pops up and says, unable to create a charging plan. I'm using the Danish system, but they haven't translated this page. That means it can't create a charging plan. It even says that the distance between known chargers is too great for it to create a charging plan. That really does seem just a bit unrealistic. I mean, I think there are plenty of chargers from here down to Paris, so I don't really get that, but let's try taking a shorter route. Because this, it just couldn't figure out. So I'll just go in and delete this route. Yes, please. And then let's try entering Berlin. That's not so far away. Maybe it can handle that. Let's see if that works better. Berlin, Germany. I see a German flag. That's nice. There you go. That's the one I want. Select the route. And then it calculates a route for me. And I can see it's a bit faster because it's closer. And again, it says you don't have enough charge, so I can add charging stops. I don't know why I have to manually ask to get charging stops added. It should just suggest them, because if I need charging stops, I'd want to have them. Well, let's see if it can do this. Yes, it actually could. It popped up and it found 1, 2, 3, 4 charging stops for me on the way to Berlin, and it even tells me how much I need to charge, how long I need to charge at each stop, and what I should charge to and from, etc. And it also tells me what charge I'll have when I arrive in Berlin. So that's really, really great. I can also go in and click on a charging stop here, and then I can press this little arrow up here, and then I can get a little bit more information. Not much. I can't see anything about what facilities are available, but at least I can see the phone number, what payment methods are accepted, opening hours, and so on. So that's also fine, really. Unfortunately, I don't have the option to go in and swap out a charging stop. I mean, I can't go in here and choose a different charging stop. I can, however, go in and search here for what's nearby. I can select places around the marker. And then it brings up a whole bunch of things that are nearby. But it's all sorts of things, like police stations and whatnot, and not any charging stations. The only charging stations it actually displays are the ones where I am currently. So if it has chosen a charging station I don't want, I actually don't have the option to go in and change it. But okay, I'm also a bit spoiled because I have Android Automotive with Google-based navigation, and it can pretty much do everything. So fair enough. But one thing I would like to be able to do is if I could filter, not necessarily choose another charging station here, but maybe from the start ask it to select certain charging providers, because it can be an advantage if I have a subscription with specific providers, and then I would prefer to charge primarily with them. That way I can have the system only find charging stations from the providers I use when it calculates a route. Let's just try to take a look here. Now I'll just exit this. I just need to figure out how to get out of these. It's kind of funny sometimes. That arrow down there is a bit hidden. Now I'm out here. I'll just stop the route for a moment and say, okay, done. Then I can go down to settings. Let's try to take a look here. I can choose classic routes, like whether it should avoid highways. I can also choose whether it should select an easy, short, economical, or fast route as the default, and so on. That's something you know from most navigation systems. If I just go back down here, it was that arrow that's there. I can adjust the sound. I can go in and set up warnings. I can go in and choose my navigation view. I can go into permanent route. There I can specify the maximum speed I want to drive at. That's actually really nice, because if I say I'm driving in Germany, I want to drive faster than 130, I just want to go at max speed. So when you plan charging stops, you should assume that I'm driving at maximum speed. Whether it works, unfortunately I haven't had the chance to test, but it's actually pretty clever that you can tell the car if you plan to drive faster than 130, for example, if that's possible. Now, I think the top speed on this one is 190, so it's a bit funny that it goes up to 200, but okay, fair enough. It's nice that I have that setting in here. I can actually also choose what my battery level should be when I arrive. So if I'm driving to a place where I know there's a charger, I don't need to arrive with 25%, so I could maybe set it down to, let's say, 10% or 11%, whatever I feel like. And then maybe I can save a charging stop that way. So that's also really nice. And I can even tell it what my minimum battery level should be during the trip, meaning at each charging stop. So what do I feel comfortable running the car down to? I actually think that's really, really nice. It's actually better than in many other cars I've seen and tested. Then preferences for charging stations. And hey, there are actually a whole lot of brands here. I can select all, and then I can choose unbranded charging stations. I'm not sure what that is, but at least I can select all these brands down here. And hey, there are actually quite a few. Let's just take a look. There's Tesla. That one wasn't enabled. If I enable it now, I wonder if I'll be able to get to Paris. Let's try and see. That was actually the only one that wasn't enabled, but there's also Porsche, and there are also Danish providers like Norlys and Clever and Circle K. That's really great because it means that if, for example, I have a Clever subscription or a Norlys subscription, then I can just say, you should only calculate the route with those charges, and it should do that. But let's just try and see, now that I've enabled Tesla, I'm getting a bit curious. Can it now make a route to Paris? I just have to try that again. I need to get used to the fact that the somewhat hidden arrow is down here. Let's just go back again and see what it says then. Now let's just enter Paris one more time. And then I guess I confirm. And here I'll just cut, so it goes a bit faster. Now it has made the route. I press Add Charging Stop. And now it gets interesting. I'll just speed things up a bit here. Well, it was actually a good thing I sped it up a bit because it actually took some time, and we've ended up in exactly the same place. Once again, it says that there are too few known charging stations for it to make a route. And that's just not true, because now I've also enabled Tesla superchargers, and they're lined up like pearls on a string along the highways in Europe. They are not that far apart, so this car should be able to make a route, but apparently it can't. Maybe the system hasn't caught up enough. Maybe it can't handle such a complex route as going down to Paris. That's a little bit disappointing. I just drove to Tuscany in our own car, and that's about 500 to 600 kilometers farther than it is to Paris, and it had no problem making a route for that. So it can easily make a route, obviously to Berlin, so it's really an issue with the system not being able to handle it if the route is too long. So you have to break your route into smaller stops and then add them along the way. That's a bit of a shame. On the other hand, I have to say, I'm quite positively surprised by how much the system can actually do, because many of the other systems that aren't Google-based, well, they have some limitations. Either they can't show your arrival state of charge, or they can't plan your charging stops correctly. And many of them can't filter by the charging providers I have here. For example, the MEB cars like Volkswagen, Skoda, Audi, Ford Explorer, they only have two options, their own charging network and Ionity. So actually MG is a bit ahead in this regard, since I can choose from a lot of different providers. They just need to get a handle on those slightly longer routes, but otherwise, it's actually approved. We also need to test the voice assistant, and it's in Danish, which is really, really nice. Not all Chinese cars have a Danish voice assistant, so congratulations on that, MG. Let's see what it can do. I usually mainly use the voice assistant for navigation because I think it's easier to say an address than to sit and type it in on the screen. Just as I told you earlier, what I usually do to begin with is to say that we want to navigate to the Opera House, which is our intended destination. So I'll go ahead and try that now.
What can I do for you?
Navigate to the opera. Now it's just thinking for a bit, processing the request. It's taking its time. I wonder if I'll ever get a result. It would probably have been faster just to type it in.
No search results found.
No, so it couldn't find it. Well, then let's try saying the address instead.
What can I do for you?
Navigate to Bredgade 10.
Can you repeat that?
Navigate to Bredgade 10. I think I'm speaking pretty clearly. No, I think we'll just turn it off. Listen here, it just doesn't work at all. It can't navigate to an address. But what is even worse?
What can I do for you?
Now I'll just go in here and press the question mark, because then it actually tells me what I can ask it to do. I can say go home, navigate to a charging station, or say I want to go to supermarkets. At least I should be able to do that. But just look at this. Right here it says it can navigate to a charging station. Let's give it a try.
What can I do for you?
Navigate to charging station. So we wait patiently. That's what I'm saying. I think the processor is a bit underpowered. Then it just simply shut down. Listen, it just doesn't work very well, even though I can say,
What can I do for you?
Set the temperature to 20 degrees.
The air conditioning temperature is now set to 20 degrees.
It managed to do that. What a surprise. I'll just turn it down again so it doesn't make too much noise. As you can see, not everything works, and even functions that it should be able to do, like navigating to the charging station. When I tried it just before, it didn't crash, but just said it couldn't find anything. So it just really doesn't work at all. And it's insanely slow. So in practice, I really don't think it's something people will want to use, because it's just a bit easier for me to simply turn this knob down here if I want to adjust the temperature or turn on the seat heating or whatever. So yes, it has a voice assistant. Yes, it's in Danish, but honestly, it's pretty much useless, I would say, and way, way, way too slow. In general, looking at the software here in the MG, well, the navigation is above average. It can do more than you can in a lot of other systems, but on the other hand, it's a bit of a shame that it fails on those longer routes, and overall, I think the system feels a little sluggish, especially the voice assistant. It is almost unusable because it's so slow. So it really depends on what you prioritize in your car, because some things are good and some things are not so great, and that story kind of repeats itself with the driving assistance, which I'll be testing in the next video. And when that's out, you can watch it by clicking right up there, because that's also a bit of a mixed experience, so you won't want to miss it. See you soon.